Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to see so many people here. My name is Vivian. Pronouns are she and they. I'm one of the volunteers for Bike NYC, as is Becky and Cindy. And just want to do a little bit about, what Bike NYC is about. It's a community of cyclists open to women, female identifying, and gender nonconforming folks. Just want to encourage folks to get on their bikes and also to have the cycling community reflect the diversity of this city, which is so vast. And we do different workshops like this one, as well as like group rides, which I know we've had to put on hold because of COVID, but hopefully we can get back to that. Yeah, so I don't know if there's anything to add to that, Becky.
No, that's great. That's a good start. So we are very excited to be partnering with Get Women Cycling. We have Angela and Jess today coming from Get Women Cycling. They are another awesome local organization, which Angela will tell you more about.
Hi, everybody. I'm Angela. I'm the founder of Get Women Cycling, and I want to thank you all for joining us on this really exciting Ask a Wrench series, specifically for WeBike followers and members. We're really excited about it. I'm the founder of Get Women Cycling. I am here with my colleague and fellow wrench, Jess. Hi, Jess. We are your wrenches. For all our Ask a Wrench series, we do 2 a month, every first and third Wednesday. So we're actually having one tomorrow. And then again, the first Wednesday of the following month and the third Wednesday. So it's really a session about getting this audience familiar and comfortable with bike mechanics. And you don't need to want to repair your bike, but at some point or another, you might have to take it in for repairs. And it will be good for you to understand the bits of your bike, the terminology, some common errors and issues and repairs, and just to feel more comfortable about the inner workings of your vehicle. So that's why we produced this Ask a Wrench series. And we're stoked about it. Today we're going to cover 2 topics. We only have a short time together, and it's a really large group. So hopefully, you'll get something out of it. But we're going to try and cover 2 topics. The first one is going to be wheels and tires. It's going to be really brief. We're going to really talk about high-level things that you need to know about your bicycle wheel and tires. And then we're going to talk about, just go over the ABC check again, since we know that spring's coming soon, which we're like already at the end of February, a couple more weeks. And then before you know it, it'll be riding season again. So we're going to just refresh your minds about that. Of course, it is Ask a Wrench. So we have some time at the end to take questions. We did get 2 questions in from Colleen. I know you're here. We got hi, Colleen. We got your question, and Michelle, not Michelle Novi, another Michelle. She sent us a question too, so we'll make sure that we answer those questions. If you don't have a question, that's okay too. You can just sit back and listen and enjoy the ride, and hopefully just absorb. That's what it's all about. So, Jess, do you want to say a few hello or a few words?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Jess, and I'm a fellow wrench here. Very excited to be here. Yeah, I love bikes and have found it very empowering to be able to work on my own bike. So it's a great pleasure for me to share what I know about bikes. So yeah, I'm just excited to be here.
Thanks, Jess. And if you have questions as we go, through these next few minutes, feel free to use the chat. I will also post in the chat some links to some Facebook videos that we've been doing for the last 5 years or so, that talk about this topic. So sometimes if you need a visual, and if you have a Facebook account, you can go there. We're trying to take those videos and put them also on YouTube and Instagram for those folks who don't have Facebook yet, but we haven't gotten them yet across the board. So, all right, so I'm gonna try and share my screen. This is Zoom, so we really can't do a lot of hands-on stuff. We're in a small space, so we really rely a lot on pictures. So I'm gonna share my screen, and we're gonna look at some pictures that have to do with wheels and tires. Hopefully folks can see this. I actually don't know how this works when people use their phones or tablets, but I hope the image comes through okay. So this is your basic bicycle wheel. This is not an e-bike or a pedal assist bike, although there's really not that much different with those bikes, but we're really talking about here pedal bikes. It's a pretty complicated piece of equipment, your wheel, actually. It has a lot of different parts to it, as you can see. And I think it's probably worth you getting to know your wheel, because actually our wheels are what carry us through the streets. So you really want to feel comfortable about your wheel and what you should look out for and what you should know. Some of the obvious things here are, of course, the rim. So this is the outer metal, mostly alloy metal with many of the bikes. Sometimes it can be carbon. This is just the circular framing of your wheel. And then you have spokes that connect the framing, the rim, to the hub, which is this center part here. And you're going to want to know some things about this hub. But you have spokes that connect to the hub. And then you'll have some sort of axle that is going through the hub that's coming out the other side. This happens to be a quick release, because it has this little lever, and you can, with your thumb, open up that quick release, unscrew it a little bit, and pop this wheel out of the fork. But many bikes, as you know, have nuts where you would need a wrench. And you would, with a wrench, unloosen the nut here on both sides to get your wheel out of your bicycle frame. So that's the axle. This is the free hub body. We know that this is a back wheel because of the free hub body. This is where, if you have gears, where that gearing, the cassette would sit on, is this right here, this part. What else do I want to say here? Of course, you have your, oh, this one doesn't have a tire, but your tire would sit over the rim. And I assume most of us have an inner tube. So the inner tube would go in there, and then the tire would cover the inner tube. And that's pretty much, that pretty much makes up your wheel. So just study it and know it. Your spokes are the number of spokes that you have. The more spokes that you have makes that wheel stronger. So if you're going long distance, or if you're carrying weight, you're going to want spokes that more spokes than less spokes. And also the number of times your spokes crisscross is another way to get a stronger wheel. So if you're carrying kids, a lot of cargo, if you're traveling cross country, you're going to want a strong wheel so that, you know, it could take the distance and the weight, and that's where the spokes would play a role into this. Okay, so this is another image of another set. This looks like it's the road bike wheel. There's the front. You can see that the front does not have the free hub body over here. So that's how you can distinguish whether it's a front wheel or a rear wheel from this piece right here. Also, the rear wheels many times will be, the spokes will be crossed, whereas in the front, not so much sometimes. Actually, this here is my front wheel, and you can see that these spokes are not crossed at all. They come straight out. As opposed to here, there's a cross. What you need to know about your rims. So if you've gotten into an accident, if you've gotten your wheel stolen, and you have to buy a wheel, they're going to ask you at the bike shop, do you want a single wall rim or a double wall rim? And that's basically the most common types of rims that are out there. This is the single wall rim, and this is the double wall rim. So that's if you were to cut that rim in half, and that's what you see in the inside. What's the difference here? The double wall, which is on your right, will be a stronger wheel. And most, I think, like, it'll also be more expensive. But for New York City commuting, I would opt for a double wall rim. The difference, this can get damaged. The single wall can get damaged easier. It can bend easier. And I think that you can probably get reasonably priced double walled rims here in New York City. So I would opt for the double wall. And then I also want you to know, because I just found this out recently, and I think Jess, you too, that we learned that there's actually a triple wall rim. Who knew? But there it is. Kind of interesting. That must be a heavy wheel. That would be another consideration if you want a lighter wheel. But then you would, I mean, that's a whole other conversation. But so here it is. Here's a triple. It's pretty interesting when you think about it. It's common. I don't think that's very common, actually. So I'm going through my images here. Okay, so this is, again, we're looking at that rim and the spokes going through it. Does anyone want to guess how many walls this rim has just from this picture? Can someone check the chat?
Eleanor says 2.
I think so too, Eleanor. You can see it, 1, 2. But what I want to point out here also is that the spokes, this is how you see connects to the rim. And what this little piece here is called a nipple, the spoke nipple, and it's threaded, and the spoke threads into that spoke nipple. And that's how these spokes stay on the rim. There's a better picture of those spokes and the nipples. Oh, that's tiny. But there it is. That's the spoke nipple threaded onto the spoke. And this one has a closer picture of those spoke nipples. These guys, when you get your wheel trued, meaning if you notice that your spokes are loose, or if you notice that your wheel is wobbling a little, it could be that your spokes are loose, and so it needs some more tension. And when we talk about truing a wheel, what we're talking about is really tightening these screws on the spokes. Because they can get loose, and then your wheel, they will lose tension, and your wheel will start to wobble a bit. There could be one reason why your wheel wobbles, is that you need your wheel to be trued, and you need those spokes to be tensioned. Now let's look at this picture. It's a different angle. Let me say one more thing about the spokes. They come in different weights, different gauges, and they also come flat and they come round. Why that's important is if you intend on doing long distance rides or fundraiser rides, like the AIDS ride or Cycle for the Cause ride or leukemia rides, any one of those rides, a lot of times they have support, but even the mechanics that support those rides won't necessarily have your spoke if you should break a spoke while or one or more spokes while you're doing this ride. And so if you're doing longer rides, you want to make sure that you carry at least 1 or 2 spokes with you. That if you did that, the mechanics will love you. That's top notch. So something to keep in mind. And the mechanics at your bike shop can measure your spokes, and then you can keep that measurement with you, and you'll know for future use, what size spoke you need. All right, let's see what else we got here. This is a quick release in action. So this is your hub. We talked about that earlier. Your axle is going through the inside of that hub, and it's being held all together to your fork on your frame through this quick release. As I mentioned before, some of these axles do have nuts. Well, you would need a wrench to loosen that nut and then remove your wheel should you need to remove your wheel to fix a flat or something. But that's just another image of what that looks like. I don't want to go into tires yet because I think I want to talk about hubs. Hubs. Here's a hub. This is a close look. Ooh, it's not. All right, that's a close look of a hub. The other end of that spoke has a little hook. And the hook goes through, it threads through the hub, and then it connects to your rim. That's how it gets connected on the other side. Why am I showing you your hubs? What do you need to know about this? Again, if you are riding and you notice that your wheel is wobbly, there's a number of factors that can cause that your wheel to wobble or rub against your brakes if you have rim brakes. And one thing that we mentioned already was that your spokes might be loose and they need to be tensioned. The second thing that could cause your wheel to wobble is that your hubs are loose. So let me see if I could get I think I could get a better picture here. Here we go. The newer bikes are not as complicated. They're more compact, but we know that there's a lot of people who have older bikes, and actually the older bikes will last for years and years and years and years. They're built, like to just never die. The new bikes are a little bit easier to maintain. They're not as complicated, but you can still get a loosening of these cones and nuts here. And when these pieces loosen, then that whole wheel is going to be wobbly. This gets threaded through the cone, and then it gets attached to your fork. But over time, these parts here can become loose. I'll see if I can get a better picture, just like, keep it in mind. I'm going to look for a better picture to see. This is here it is again. Your hub would be here. This part is going through the hub. So you can see all these pieces can get loose over time. And when these pieces get loose, then the wheel starts to wobble. and it could be a problem. I think that might be I thought I had a better picture, but here we go. This is yet another image. That's that axle. These are your ball bearings, and sometimes those ball bearings need to be replaced. They need to be re-greased. That's part of your maintenance. But this is the cone that actually can loosen over time, that then, you know, gets threaded onto your axle here, and that could cause your wheel to shake and wobble a little bit. All right, so we talked about rims, we talked about spokes, we talked about hubs, we talked about the quick release and the nut, the axle nut. So let's move now to tires. So there's all kinds of tires, all kinds of sizes. I actually have a video on winter tires, and I'm going to put a bunch of links in the chat with some videos that are relating to the topics that we're talking about. I want you to know about, what you need to know about tires is understanding the wear. When is the correct time to replace a tire? And then what tire is right for you, for your riding style, for your bike. When we're talking about replacing the tire, what you need to look for is wear. If you have a knobby tire like these here with lots of channels, you will be able to tell that it's worn out once these channels, this levels down, and it becomes more smooth, and you can hardly see the distinction between the knobs, the knobby tires. So you want to look for that. Over here, it looks like there's a little dry rot. So on the edges of your tire, you want to just kind of like take a peek and see if they are fraying, if they're crumbling. If you see cracks along the sidewall, those are all signs that you probably should be thinking about getting a new tire. Of course, if you have a tire that has a lot of gouges in it, like, you know, from glass and nails and whatever you've gone over the years, if you start to see that your tire is becoming more and more cut up, that could be a good time to start thinking about getting a new tire. In terms of winter riding and wet riding, a lot of people think the fatter and the knobbier the tire is, the better off they are. That's not necessarily true. I would say one of the fundamental things that I think you should consider about buying tires for wet weather, winter weather, is the stickiness factor of the compound. What is the tire made of? And when you feel it, you'll be able to feel that it's sticky. I think that's a better option over like the knobbiness of a tire here in the city, if you're doing a lot of city riding. These tires, especially the fatter ones, are good for like dirt, you know, it's mostly for mountain biking, for mud, for sand, but they're not really good at gripping and cornering in city streets. So for that reason, I would not so much lean toward the fatter, knobbier one, but I would think of go for the more stickier one. You can still get bicycle tires with channels, but they don't have to be, you know, it could be something like this. Again, that's for city riding. How are we doing on time?
I think it's about time to move to another topic.
Okay, so good. This is the segue. So the only thing that we didn't really talk about here is the innards, what's inside the tire. And that, of course, for many of us is a tube, which is this guy. So you want to make sure that in terms of tire inflation, a lot of people think that you have to put the maximum pounds per inch in your tire. That's not true. That has to do with the amount of air that you put in your tires really depends on the load. So what is your body weight and what is the extra load that you'll be carrying? There are charts on the internet. I don't think I have that link handy, but if you want it and you can't find it, you should reach out to us. We'll get you the link, but it's really based on your tire size, your wheel size, and your body weight, and whatever weight that you plan on carrying with you will determine the optimal air pressure. But we know that there are, where is it? Yeah, you do have this indication on your tires on the sidewall as to what the minimum pounds per square inch should be and the maximum. So here is 90, and then the minimum, and then the maximum is 125. By default, I usually go 5 to 10 below the maximum. But it's up to you what you want to do. If you go higher, what you don't want to do is go beyond the 125, and you don't want to go below the minimum. I think this is the takeaway. And then we're talking about filling up the tires, we're talking about air, we're talking about tubes. You also have on your tires a tire size. It's going to be like 700 by 25, or it could be like 27 by 1 1/4, or whatever it is. That's important for you to know, because when you buy bicycle tubes, which you will have to buy, they're gonna ask you what size tube, and that's gonna depend on your tire size. And finally, with regard to tubes, you guys probably know that there are two types of tubes, two types of tube valves. One is the Schrader or the skinny, and the other is this is the Schrader. And then this is the Presta. This is more like the car tire valve. The Presta is skinnier, it has a lock nut. What you need to know here is not only your tire size, so you know what size tube to get, but particularly with these Presta valves, you need to know how long that valve should be, because there are so many different rims now that have deep dish rims, that have really wide rims, that sometimes this Presta valve doesn't go through all the way if you get one that's too short. They come in different lengths. So you need to know the length with regard to this tube. Not so much this one. All right, so I'm gonna throw the ball over to Jess. Jess is gonna talk to you about the ABCs, your bike check. A is as air, so it seems like a good segue now. I'll turn off my screen.
Awesome. Thanks, Angela. Yeah, so I'm gonna go over the ABCs, like a quick bike check for when you are going on a ride, especially a longer ride. The A, like Angela mentioned, is for air. So you definitely want to make sure that your tires have the proper air pressure for your ride. Like she said, I usually like to go 10 to 5 below the max. You definitely don't want to be below, because if you ride on a tire that is like squishy, that can increase your chances of getting a flat tire by getting a pinch flat. So basically because your tube isn't inflated, it's going to rub on itself and sort of pinch itself. So that'll cause a flat. And then if you have too much pressure, then you have like the chance that it might pop. That being said, I would also check to make sure that your tire is properly seated in the rim, that there's no like little bits coming out anywhere, because that will also cause you a flat. The B is for brakes. So you definitely want to make sure that one, you can reach the brakes, but you're in a comfortable position and you can reach them well. And then two, you want to check for tightness. How tight are they? Usually when you push the lever, they shouldn't go all the way back to the bar itself. You should have at least 2 fingers distance between the lever and the handlebar. And then if you feel that they are too loose, you can adjust them. The easiest way to adjust them, usually on brakes, you'll have this thing called a barrel adjuster. Let's see. I know we have a picture. Here, I'm going to share my screen as well. So this is a picture of some brakes, like brake calipers. And you see this screw right here. This is called a barrel adjuster. And it's a screw. So you want to screw it out in order to create more space between the cable and the caliper itself. And that will help you tighten the cable tension. So you'll have tighter brakes. So yeah, and then you also want to check for brake pad wear. So here is a picture of some brake pads. These are like newer brake pads on the left here, and these are worn brake pads. And usually on the pads themselves on the side here, I don't know if you can see, it says limit. They have like a wear limit line. So if you see that you're reached that line or gone past it, it's time to replace your brake pads as well. And then the C in ABC stands for chain, cassette, and crank, which is basically this, which we also call your drivetrain. So your cassette is this gear cluster in the back, which allows you to change gears. This is your chain, and then this is your crank. So your front gears. So for your chain, you want to make sure it's clean and lubed. Definitely, if it's rusty, if you have a rusty chain, definitely recommend replacing that, because if you ride and start putting a lot of pressure on there, it can snap, and we definitely don't want that. And when it comes to like chain maintenance and cleaning, usually using any like degreaser soap and water is perfect. You could use like Dawn, like dishwashing soap, or this, what we use at bike shops mostly is this thing called Simple Green. And usually with like a bucket and a rag, and you could just like grab the chain with your wet rag and crank, like grab your pedals and just pedal it and just let the chain itself run through the rag. If it's a little grimier, you could always like grab a brush, like a toothbrush, or go buy a brush especially for your bike and just sort of like scrub on it a little bit. If you do that, I would definitely also get into the cassette and your crank if you can. And I would also definitely suggest cleaning in here. Then this part right here is what we call a derailleur, which is the mechanism that allows you to change gears. So I would, if you're gonna go cleaning in here, I would suggest going in there as well. And while you're checking your cassette, chain, and crank, I would also check the derailleur to make sure that it's nice and tight. and that it's straight, hanging straight off the back of your bike, and to make sure that it won't go into your wheel, because that can be kind of dangerous. And the way that you would check that is simply by checking your gears. Go all the way up and then try to like continue to go up to see if it'll go past. And if it does, there's like, you can do adjustments to that. There's also those same barrel adjuster that you can find on your brake calipers, you can also find on the derailleur. So you could probably do the adjustment by some tightening or loosening of that cable as well. And with cranks, I would also grab like your pedals and try to wiggle them side to side to make sure that your cranks are on there tight and they're not loose. If they're loose, there's a crank bolt in here usually, which you can grab an Allen key. It's usually like a size 8 and just tighten it. If they're loose, what could happen is your chain will pop off. And in the long term, it could also damage your bottom bracket. Yeah. And then the Q in quick check is for quick release, which I know Angela talked about before. So you definitely want to make sure that your quick releases are on nice and tight. There's a picture. So right here, like the quick release, you want to make sure that the lever is all the way in the closed position, and it should be relatively hard or like a little bit difficult to get it to close. You know, because if it's loose, then your wheel could pop out while you're riding, and you definitely don't want that to happen. If you have a bolt-on axle, I would grab a wrench and make sure that they're nice and snug as well. I usually like to put my body weight into it, put the bike on the floor and just put your weight into it. And then the C, once you've checked all those things, I would definitely like hop on your bike and make sure, go on like a nice, like a short little check ride, make sure all your gears are working, that you don't hear any grinding noises. You know, make sure that your seat bolt is nice and tight, as well as your handlebar bolts up here. And yeah, I think that's really the ABCs for a bike ride.
Thanks, Jess. I do want to mention one thing about quick releases. Do you all know if you have a quick release on your bicycles? There's at least a few of you who do. Because I didn't know this, and it's really it could really be damaging. So what I want to show you is that if you take the quick release out, and honestly, there's no reason why you would need to take the quick release out if you're removing your wheel from your bike frame. You just loosen it, right? But there should be no reason why you take it out. But some people do. They take it out, and I'm going to take mine out here. And that's okay if you want to do that. But what I want you to remember is how to put it back on. Or maybe you loosen it too much, and the next thing you know, it's fell apart, and it's all like all the pieces are all over the place. So this is one part of the quick release. That's the lever, and then that you use your thumb or fingers to take it out, and then this is the nut that tightens it, and it cinches, it squeezes against your bike frame and keeps your tire onto your fork. But what's important to know is these springs. It also comes with springs. And there's 2 on each side. So there's one at the quick release side, and then there's one at the nut side. And this is the one that usually flies off when we unloosen it too quickly, and then it falls all over the place. And so then we're scrambling to find the spring, and we find the spring, and then we put it on, and then we tighten the nut. But what I want you to know at this point in time, this spring is incorrectly placed on. It matters, I guess, is the point that I want you to make, that I want you to know. It should be that it's a cone-shaped spring. Where's my camera? And because it's a cone-shaped spring, there's a purpose to that. And so it needs to be placed in with the narrow side going toward the frame of the bike, and the wide side sitting against the nut. And a lot of people don't pay attention to that, because why would you? No one ever tells you to pay attention to that, but you really do need to pay attention to that, okay? Because then it doesn't thread properly, and it just causes problems. So that's that. I think now we're doing really good on time. We have a good 15 minutes or so to take questions if people have questions, and comments or closing statements. I know Colleen is here. So you had some questions, Colleen. You had a question about
patching a wheel. If I'm out riding and have a problem, what do I need to have on me to be prepared to fix it? I guess, yeah, figure this session was super helpful in seeing the anatomy of the tube inside of the wheel, but I'm just kind of nervous. I've been going out for 40, 50-mile rides, and each time I go, I'm just really scared that I'll be 25, 30 miles out of the city and get stuck, or have it pop and just not know what I should have had to be prepared for that.
It's most likely that it won't pop unless someone other than you put in the tube at some point in time incorrectly. But the other reasons why tubes pop is that they're overinflated. Usually this happens at the bike shop, right, Jess? Sometimes we're pumping and we're chatting, next thing you know, the whole thing blows up. But it's a lot of air pressure. It only happened to me once, where my bike was hanging on my hook on my wall, and it popped, and that was in the summer, and that's because it expanded. But it's not likely when you're riding that it would pop. So have comfort in that. I would say, Jess, you have a pump, a hand pump? Check. Tire irons? These type of things?
I'll add my list. Tire irons, you said?
Yeah, you'll need at least 2. Some people like 3. They come in plastic like this, and they come in metal. I would say stick with the plastic. They come thin like this, and they come a little wider. I would say get the little wider. I'm a big fan of Pedro's tire irons. Jess, it looks like Jess is there. She goes.
Looking for them. These are Pedro's tire levers. They're great. We use them at the shop all the time. Yeah,
you see the difference in the width, and also they're colorful. So if you're in if you have to dig in your bag, you'll see that more than you'll see black. Of course, your tube, I would say carry 2 tubes. You have 2 bikes. Make sure that if you have a press the valve, make sure you know the length of that valve. I think they come in, what is it, just 45 millimeters, 60 millimeter, and 90 millimeter, I think is the length. So the 45 is the shortest, and then it's 60 and then 45.
There's 32 as well.
32 as well. And then, so your tubes, and then, yeah, if you go through both of your tubes, you want to get a patch kit. We don't have the time to go over the patch, how to patch the tire now, but they, you know, you can look that up online. It's not that difficult. They even have patches that are glueless now that make it a little bit easier. Where the old schools that you had like some sort of rubber cement, and then you'd have to wait for that rubber cement to dry. And oh, there you go. Jess is doing this show and tell there.
I have my toolbox ready.
So yeah, I think that's it. So you have at least 2 tubes, you have at least 2 to 3 tire irons, you have your pump, and patches, right, Jess?
Yeah. I also sometimes like to carry like there's these things called like these little CO2 cartridges, because sometimes with a hand pump you can't get the desired PSI because they're just so small. But yeah, Angela's showing one, and if you carry them, they're like super small, super lightweight, and you can buy them at like a shop, and you attach them to this valve, which will help you reach the desired PSI, so that you don't ride on like super low pressure tires once you change your tube and everything.
Yeah, that's a good point. You know, what kind of bike do you have, Colleen? Do you know?
Yeah, it's a Fuji. That's all. I got it from like a bike rental shop that was going under last summer.
So it probably has it doesn't have the very thin tires, I imagine. It probably has.
Nope, it's pretty bulky. Yeah.
Okay, so those are low volume tires, which means you know they don't take a high PSI. You're probably not going to 100 PSI. So that's good. Because what I was going to mention to you about the pumps, and for everybody to know in the room, that the mini pumps, the pumps that you carry with you on your bike rides, they have a ceiling of how much air pressure will go into that tire, and it's usually not 100 psi's or 90 psi's. It's usually lower than that. I think, I don't know what it is, like 65 or 70, I want to say, on average, but it does depend on the kind of pump that you have. So for those of us who have like a road tire like this that needs like 100 psi or more, those mini pumps aren't going to, no matter how much you pump, it's not going to fill it up to our desired, if you want to go to the max in terms of pounds per inch, and those mini pumps won't do it, but it will get you to the point where you can ride it. And then if you get to a bike store, you can get a proper filling, top it off.
So we have some questions in the chat.
Yeah, I can. So one of the questions in the chat was from Chanel, asking about the difference with tubeless tires.
The difference, I mean, you don't need the tube. So we had a picture of that, but I don't know how really good it was. So here's the thing with tubeless tires. I was really psyched about it because the technology is great. You don't have to worry about tubes. There's a sealant inside that tire, so it's some sort of liquid goo that if that tire gets punctured, the liquid goo would then fill in that puncture, and the air would be able to hold. Like, that's the technology behind it, which in theory sounds great. It's a lot like car tires. Car tires don't have inner tubes. And then if they get a leak, they'll plug it in and then it's good. But the problem with tubeless, from my understanding, here in the city, is that a lot of the flats in the city are come from shards of metal and jagged edges, glass, rocks, just jagged. And that sealant inside that tubeless tire is not good. It doesn't fill in those jagged edges very well. And so what happens is, while you're riding, a lot of the sealant is going to be spitting out all over because it doesn't seal very well. It only seals well with like round punctures, which we could get those too, but there's a lot of jagged debris out on city streets.
There's also a question from Julie. Do disc brakes need to be cleaned, and how?
Want to take that, Jess?
Sure. I'm not muted. Okay, yeah. Usually if you have disc brakes and you start hearing some squeaking, I would definitely clean them. Usually the thing about disc brakes is that it's easier for them to get dirty, just because they're much closer to the ground, and then stuff flies in there all the time. For us, whenever we are working on disc brakes, you have to be very careful not to touch the disc themselves, because any amount of grease will make it squeak and not grip on, like, the brake pads won't grip as well to the disc itself. And when cleaning, usually what we'll do is just grab some sandpaper, pop your wheel off of the bike, grab some sandpaper and just sort of rub it all over, and then go over it with a clean paper towel or clean rag and some isopropyl alcohol, spray it and then just wipe it. And if you can, I would also spray some alcohol into the caliper itself a little bit and just clean in there. And when you put your wheel back in the frame, make sure not to touch the disc itself, because even like your finger grease can get in there. And as for like frequency, I'm not really sure, to be totally honest. Maybe like, it depends on how much you ride. A lot of bike checking and stuff depends on how much you ride, because the more that you ride, the more that you wear things. So depending on how much you ride, I would say maybe like once a month. If you ride a lot, maybe like twice a month. Yeah.
There's also two questions from Ufasaha. I hope I'm saying your name right. First question is, what is your opinion about toughies to avoid flat tires?
I don't know what toughies. Have you heard of? I don't know toughies.
Yeah, Tuffy is like this lining, extra lining that is put between the tire and the tube.
Yeah.
I don't really have much of an opinion on it, to be honest. My bike has Tuffies because they were there when I got it. But the old bike I used to work at, my coworker, who taught me everything I know about bike mechanics, he told me that they're not really necessary, and sometimes they could even cause more flats. So like I was saying, if you are riding with low tire pressure, it just creates more friction. It can create more friction between like the tube and the tire itself. But yeah, I think it's one of those things that in shops everyone has a different opinion about. I know a lot of people that use them. I also know a lot of people that don't use them. There's also some really great quality tires out there, like gator skin hard shells, that come with like Kevlar belts, which are good for puncture resistant, that are good puncture resistant like materials. So yeah, I mean, I've had experience with them, so
sorry, Jess. Yeah, I think I'm leaning more to simplicity. You don't want more things that you have to deal with. And forever we didn't have toughies. And I mean, really the key to avoiding flats of any kind is air pressure. Check your air pressure, especially if you have thin tires, road tires, the high pressure tires. They lose air a lot, and you constantly just check your air pressure. You all should have floor pumps in your homes and with a gauge on it. And as long as you have the correct air pressure, you should be fine with dealing. And then a decent tire. But that's just, yeah, I don't like any extra stuff in the middle. Like, what was the other question?
The second question is, what does the chain tension adjustment do? My chain sometimes skips when it needs to be fixed, but my mechanic also adjusts my chain tension, but I don't understand the mechanics.
Do you have a single speed bike?
Hi, no, for that bike, it's an 8-speed. It's a commuter hybrid, 8-speed Jamis.
I don't know why he would adjust, like it's hard to adjust chain tension, right, Jess? Am I missing something on a gear, on a single speed? That's normally something that you would see on a single speed where they pull the wheel back. And when you pull the wheel back, it creates, you know, a longer amount of space between your front chain ring and the back where your gear is. But there's only one gear. So they pull that back, and then that chain stretches.
Mm.
But for geared bikes, it's odd. Maybe he's checking the tension. Could he just be checking the tension?
Is there a knob somewhere on the back there that either tightens the chain or loosens the chain? Or maybe it's a different mechanism that I'm thinking about.
Yeah, Meryl. Hi, Meryl. Meryl's a wrench too. And she was suggesting the B limit screw. Yeah.
Okay, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how to adjust that, but I do find when I just grease my chain that seems to take care of the issue if it's like too dirty over time, like you were talking about cleaning the chain. But that tension knob, or whatever it's called, seems to have something to do with it as well, and I just don't understand.
I think once that setting is set properly, and if the mechanic made the adjustment, I don't think that will loosen. It shouldn't loosen again. It shouldn't lose that position.
Fixed. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Usually, once you find the proper B limit screw spot, like it should stay there and it doesn't loosen because it's a screw that's basically dictates where your derailleur is sitting.
Okay.
And then the only other thing that I can think of is like if your chain is getting like popping off and is getting loose, like you said, it's just wear, natural wear from your riding, and maybe it's time to consider a new chain, getting a new chain.
Okay. Yeah, I ride a lot, so yeah. It's like
so
multiple things happening, I think.
Yeah, so your chain is worn, so it's just starting to slip. And so I would go to your mechanic and ask him to check the wear on your chain. And then usually when that happens, you'll also have to check the wear on your cassette, because these are consumable parts, so they wear together over time. And if you change one without changing the other, you'll continue to experience skipping.
And a basic tune-up, do they usually check for those things? Because I don't know what is, honestly. Like, I just take it for the tune-up and I hope it rides well.
It depends on the
Yeah.
But generally, like changing your chains, a shop should check the wear of your chain when they're diagnosing it to take it in for a tune-up, and then they'll tell you about it. But usually when it comes to a tune-up, like changing your chains and cassettes will come like a separate thing.
Separate. Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you for both.
There's one more question from Chanel. If your chain takes a while to settle into the gear, what does that mean? Sometimes it doesn't go to get back into the other gear.
So it's kind of like, it's like hovering, it's a lag. Chanel? If it sounds like it's a lag between going up or down the cassette, I'm assuming it could be in the front or it could be in the back.
It's a lag and it doesn't attach to the other.
So that's probably an adjustment. It's either that the cable, the shifting cable that pulls on the chain so that it can go up into the lower, so it can go either lower or higher on the cassette. It seems like that there's a tension. It could be a tension problem with that. So it might be that the cable is overstretched, or it needs to be more loose. It's either too loose or not loose enough. That's like that's the first thing that comes to mind without really like going into deeper diagnosis of that. Would you agree, Jess? So
Yeah.
Cable shift.
First, I would definitely check your cable tension.
Yeah. So there's let's see. Jess, do you have the photo of the barrel adjuster for the shifters? Maybe we can just throw that up on the screen. I don't have that album open.
1 second.
What kind of bike do you have?
This
This
is a
one, oh, my bike is a Giant Escape 3.
Okay, so this will work. This is probably the same type of mechanism.
yeah. So this is a picture of a derailleur, and this part right here, this is the barrel adjuster. So I would probably. It sounds like you need to increase the tension of your cable, which is right here, and it goes through this housing. So I would try to unscrew this until your chain can go in that gear and stay there.
Okay, well, I think our time is about up. I want to give a huge thanks to our speakers, our presenters today, Angela and Jess from Get Women Cycling. They were great and so knowledgeable, and I learned a lot actually, which was really helpful. So thanks to Get Women Cycling for partnering with us. And also thanks to our Bike NYC volunteers, Vivian and Cindy. Cindy is actually recording this, so we will make the recording available for people who want to refer back to it or share it with your friends who couldn't make it. Okay, well, have a good night, everyone.
Yeah, and I just want to thank you all very much. This was really great, right, Jess? This was like really awesome for us. And I did put a bunch of links in the chat. So I think you should save the chat file and you'll know where everybody's from. So the next time that we're all together, we can quiz each other on where we're from. But there's links in there to some videos. There's links in there to our events that are coming up. And there's a 800 number, 888 number in there if you need to call a wrench. So there's lots of good information in there, and we hope that we see you guys again, if not, and we bike elsewhere.
Great. Okay. Well, have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.